So this evening's topic, and Ngakpa's teaching this evening, so this evening's topic is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to practice. So thank you, Ngakpa.
The 4 thoughts that turn to the mind to practice, or the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, in Tibetan, the Lutog Nyamji, and also known as the 4 ordinary preliminaries. These are ideas, thoughts that lead us to the conclusion that practice is what we should be doing. And they are called the 4 ordinary preliminaries because they are understandable in terms of our ordinary life, without any special knowledge, without any great realization. All we need to do is to live our lives and be aware of what that's like. In Tibetan, the word preliminary is nundro, which means before going. So a nundro is that which takes you to the base of practice if you're not already there. So it gets you to the bus stop or the railway station or the airport if you're not already there. And in this case, these 4 thoughts form the nundro for the practice of the sutric vehicle. The 4 thoughts are the precious human rebirth, impermanence and death, karma, and the unsatisfactory nature of samsara. And they should, between them, create the inevitable sense that we should be practicing. That's the idea. So as we go through these, if you find that you can prove each one to yourself in terms of your own experience, then practice becomes inevitable. Now, you may all have already turned your mind to practice.
Because you're here.
This is quite possible. But to look at the preliminaries is always a good idea, because although we may have turned our mind to practice, that's not where our mind always is. So these are then reminders of things that we can consider in order to turn our mind back to practice if we've wandered off in some fashion. So we'll look at each one in turn, and if you bear in mind the idea that you should be able to understand this, and you should be able to see how each one is present in your own life, and how the 4, taken all together, come to an inevitable conclusion, and we'll see at the end whether you think that that is actually the case. So the first of these is the precious human rebirth. And the question is really, what does it mean to be human? And what are the other options? It's called the precious human rebirth because it's a rarity. It's a rarity to simply be human in a human body when you look at all the other possibilities that there are in the world, in terms of who we could be or who we could have been or what we could have been. But it's also not simply enough just to be born with a human body. It's also important to have a human mind and human mind moments. And so when we look at the rarity of the precious human rebirth, it's the rarity of being human in a human body, and it's the rarity of having a mind that remains a human mind. So humanity is a question of having freedoms and faculties, and the ability to question our perception, so that our lives proceed at a pace where we have time, we have space, we're able to look at what our lives are like, but also not take everything for granted, not take every perception as if it were the truth. Be able to ask ourselves questions about how we see the world. And this is a case of being open, practicing openness and kindness, and not falling into one of the other conditions or one of the other realms that are available. We've spoken in previous teachings about the realms of existence as being places where we could find ourselves at any moment. Anything from the hell realms, where everything happens far too quickly for us to be able to understand anything, as well as being extremely painful, and the heavenly realms, where everything is blissful and everything is happening very slowly and nothing is questioned. So in the human realm, if we really are human, then life and experience proceeds at a pace where there's a balance between irritation and space. And in the balance between irritation and space, we can ask ourselves what's going on. We can ask ourselves what's real and what is just our perception. So in this realm, if we are in this realm and we're not falling into other states of mind, then we have an open perception. We have the ability to practice awareness and kindness, and we avoid being consumed by other mental states. We avoid being distracted, and we avoid finding ourselves as much as we can in states of anger or in states of territorialism. And all of those are conditions that we question. So the precious human rebirth, in short, is looking at what we have, what resources and possibilities are available to us, however our life might seem to us, and realizing that what we have is rare in the world. It's rare in the world in terms of other kinds of beings, and it's rare in the world in terms of humanity. Just being able to have that sense of openness and freedom, and that willingness and interest to think that things may not be as they first appear. So if we understand that, then we understand the rarity and preciousness of that. The second thought, I don't know if these things are always in this order, but this is the order I've seen them in, The second thought is in impermanence and death. And I feel that this is very nicely placed, because the first teaching is all these wonderful things that we have from being human. And the second teaching is, but it's not necessarily going to last. And that works in terms of complacency, that our current situation, however good it might be, will come to an end. It's said that death is certain, but its time is uncertain. So anything that we're doing could come to an end at any moment. But also within that, it's not simply our long-term plans. It's not simply the length of our life that's being considered. It's every mind moment. Every mind moment comes and goes. Ideas come to an end. Interests come to an end. So we're looking here at dying and being reborn in every moment. And so our moods can change. We can go from being quite happy to being sad at any time. We can go from having an interest in practice to not having an interest in practice. All of these things are capable of changing at any time. So with looking at impermanence and death, we're looking at not being able to afford to be complacent about what we're doing, understanding that things can come to an end at any time. I also feel that there's a tension, possibly a creative tension, between our long-term plans and what we're doing right now, and not sacrificing our immediate moment for a distant future that may not come into being. But on the other hand, not being reckless in terms of what we're doing, so that means that our long-term future becomes unstable. And we need to look at both of those in terms of what continues and what comes to an end. So looking at impermanence and death, it's the knowledge that everything we're doing could come to an end at any time, so that it's important to remain with practice and with the sense of continuity, the sense of continually being a practitioner. The third thought is karma. And with karma, we're not talking about Newtonian mechanics. We're not talking about actions and reactions. We're talking very much about perception and response. And this is what makes karma provable in our own experience. Because if things were happening to us because of something we'd done in a previous life, there's not a lot you can do with that. But as soon as we're talking about our perception, how we see the world, and our response to that perception, then we can see karma at play immediately. That something in what we see sparks anger. Somebody does something to us. Something happens in the supermarket, we get cut up on the road, whatever it might be, and we find that we're in a state of anger because of our perception of a particular situation. And we have the knowledge that we don't necessarily have to see things that way, because other people aren't necessarily seeing things that way. I've spent a long time being irritated by people parking on pavements. Not everybody is irritated by people parking on pavements, and that's an immediate teaching that I've decided somewhere along the line that this thing's an irritating thing. And it comes back to me, to my perception, and how I look at the world, and my idea about how things should be. So this is where we can gain some perspective from other people. If something is winding me up and it's not winding other people up, I've got to take a look at that and maybe have a sense of humor about it. That would be a human thing to do. So the wonderful thing about Buddhist teachings quite often is that they'll break things down into a usable structure where you can look at how the pieces work and look at what you can do about it. And I very much like the teachings on karma, because from the point of view of perception and response, what we have is pattern perception, and what we have is a patterned response. So then we have to look at, how do these patterns come into being? What makes us like that? The answer, of course, is we're making us like that. So it puts us very much into the driving seat, if you will, of how we look at things and how we respond to things. In order to pattern our perception, we have to make what's called a complete karma. And the structure of a complete karma is wanting to do something, doing that thing, and being happy that we've done it. We want to eat the chocolate. We eat the chocolate, and we're happy that we've eaten the chocolate. And there's a complete karma. We create the predisposition to look fondly upon chocolate and to create a sense of a momentum about eating it again. Now, if any of these aspects aren't there, then that tendency is not going to be created quite so completely. And here is our way out of karmic vision. If we look at this strange green, small green vegetable, especially at Christmas time, we see the sprout, we want to eat the sprout, we taste the sprout, and it's absolutely vile. We haven't created a complete karma. The chances of us looking fondly upon the sprout in future are somewhat minimal. So it's mechanistic in that way. And if any of those aspects are missing or weak in some way, the karma is not complete. So this means that if there's no intention in what we've done, the karma is incomplete. So we've accidentally caused hurt to people, but there wasn't an intention. We might want to do something about the hurt that we've done, but we didn't intend to do it. So there isn't that sense of creating momentum or creating a habit pattern in terms of what we're doing. So because of that, the karmic effect is weaker. And so when we become aware of how we are and how we've patterned our perception, we can look at what we're doing to maintain that pattern. And if somebody points out, these drivers who park on the pavement, they're actually being kind to other drivers. There's something else at work there. And the sense of, I'm right, this is wrong, can start to become a little looser and doesn't have to be overwhelming. We don't have to be stuck with that pattern, and we can start to find it humorous. so it's possible then to make changes. And here we enter what's sometimes known as the hell of the practitioner, because it's when we see something about ourselves that we're not entirely happy with. And we've noticed this, or maybe it's somehow been pointed out to us, but there's a lot of energy going in that direction. And there's a tendency to continue going in that direction, but we notice it. And so for a while, we're stuck with carrying on with that momentum in terms of karmic perception and response. And we try to become aware of it earlier, or we at least regret the action after the event. And so these things can become weaker. They don't have so much of a hold on us. We can escape from that karmic vision. The other aspect of karma are primary and secondary causes. So when we pattern our perception, if we fully pattern our perception, we create a primary cause. And a primary cause is what's in us. So if I create a primary cause for being livid when somebody parks on the pavement, it's there, it's in me. It needs a secondary cause. It needs the environment to trigger that. And if I'm somewhere where that's not happening, it's not triggered, not happening. But as soon as I enter into an environment that sparks that within me, then boom, it's there. Karmic perception and response comes into play. I always tell people I didn't know I had a temper until we had children. I thought I was this completely calm, easygoing person, unruffled. And then we had children and they ignored me. Bang. Something was there immediately. That was a teaching in itself. So we become aware of these things. So the secondary causes spark with the primary causes. And if we've not seen one of these things before, in some ways it's a blessing. Something's pushed our buttons. We know what's there and we can do something about it. So in terms of karma, the teaching is that we understand that our perception is patterned. We're not seeing things exactly as they are. And we understand that through that patterning, we make inaccurate responses to our environment or to what's going on. But also within these teachings, there's what we can do about it. There are these methods in terms of becoming more aware of what's happening, being able to see things in such a way that what seemed to be an instantaneous response to the situation actually contains a number of steps. We can actually see ourselves going through these motions of following this habituated response, and we can see it almost happening in slow motion. And we can start to catch it earlier and earlier in its process until we don't have to act it out. We don't have to speak those words. We don't have to think those thoughts. And so there's a way of undoing our karmic patterning, our karmic perception. And the fourth of the four thoughts is the unsatisfactory nature of samsara. Now, samsara is not, could be, and is sometimes indicated as being the world we live in. And that world consists of the obvious sufferings, old age, sickness and death, something's going to get us at some point. We're going to have aches and pains. Things aren't going to go quite the way we wanted them to. And there's a sense of unsatisfactoriness in that. If things go right, they go right for a period of time. And as we've already heard, then they end. I sometimes think of this a bit like getting an upgrade on an aeroplane. If ever we go on aeroplanes again, it's good for the length of the flight, and that's it. Something goes well, suddenly something goes well, but then it ends, you get off, it may never happen again. So whatever's happening, whatever we manage to do, will come to an end. So however right things seem to be going, it doesn't last. Now, where this dissatisfaction lies is in our fundamental misconception of how reality should work. Because we cling to form as a confirmation of our being, reality, being non-dual, brings with it emptiness as well. Where there's form, there's emptiness. Where there's emptiness, there's form. If we only look at the form aspect of something, then the emptiness aspect will get us at some point in time, and we'll experience dissatisfaction there. And it's our approach to reality that creates this samsaric dissatisfaction. It's how we look at the world and how we expect the world to function that creates our dissatisfaction. So it's not out there, it's in here. And that's actually really quite liberating, because if there was something wrong with the world, how do you avoid that? If it's a matter of our own personal perception, we can change that. So all of these teachings are to do with how we can change our situation. So if we recap, we have this precious human rebirth. We have these mind moments that are occasionally actually human, but they're rare. We have these endowments, we have these freedoms, but they come to an end. So we can't delay our approach to practice. We can't put it off for some time in the future. Practice has to be now. Now, we might be busy now, we might have busy lives, and we have to fit into that practice in amongst all of that, whether it is formal practice or whether it's the informal practice of bringing practice into our lives. But we can't just leave everything to some later point in time where we have lots and lots of time to do things, because that time may not arrive. I mean, it might be fortunate, it might well arrive, but you can't guarantee anything. And that's what the teaching on impermanence is telling us. You can't be complacent about the situation. The teaching on karma says actions have consequences, and we can do something about that. So that we understand that how we see the world is not necessarily accurate, but we can take action to change that, to make a difference. And then we understand the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, which is based on a misperception, a perception that reality should be form and should never be emptiness. If we understand if all of these are present, if all of these are found to be true in our experience, then practice becomes inevitable and practice becomes immediate. Practice is what we do now. I feel if any one of these were missing, then we'd have some kind of escape clause. If the ability to be human were common, if it wasn't rare and precious, or if it didn't come to an end, or if karma didn't work in a way that we could actually free ourselves from it, if we were trapped in there in some way, or if reality was perfect, or if we could not see the imperfections in reality, then there wouldn't be this impetus. We wouldn't have been able to take these four thoughts as the nundro to engage in practice. But if we're able to find that these four thoughts are true, if we're able to look at our own lives and look at our own perceptions and find them to be true, then practice becomes inevitable, and practice is what we engage in.
Thank you. So from what you were saying, it seems that in some sense, with regard to karma, it's the secondary causes that are the biggest danger, because we don't know what will spark an unhelpful reaction in ourselves.
Absolutely. It's the secondary causes are the minefield that we walk through, and we don't know where the mines are, and we don't know what they are. Depending on our view of that, we could take the view that when something is sparked, we get to see ourselves and it's an opportunity to do something about it. Otherwise, it's sitting there dormant. But also there's the approach of avoiding things that spark those reactions.
Well, I guess that's the renunciate path.
It's the renunciate path.
Yeah.
So what Geshe Damche used to say at Lamrim, it was that if going out to a pub and getting drunk sparks all these things for you and you carry out unwise actions, he said, don't go to alcohol-y places, you would say. So you can avoid as well. And the choice is there. Because we are practitioners, we don't always have to go to, woohoo, this thing is blown up in my face, do it again until I stop doing it. You can take a break from that. If something sparks with you and you don't have the wherewithal to deal with it, then avoiding is possible, but you know it's there. Now, there's no forgetting that it happened, and there may be the wish to continue to practice to overcome it, but you can take a gentler path if you want to.
There's a question from Dreamy. We might feel trapped in moments when we are not aware of the pattern we are caught in. Any suggestions as how to see that? Is it a question of endurance and humor?
When we're trapped in a pattern that we can't see, we're stuck, because all we can see are the results of the pattern. As soon as we have a sense of humor, we're actually not in the pattern anymore. Not entirely anyway, even though it might be something that drags us back, there's a chink in the armor, as it were, of that pattern. We've noticed a hole in it, and although it might be one of these situations where the pattern carries a lot of momentum and we find ourselves back in it, every time we're able to escape, and every time we're able to look on it from another view, and every time we're able to have a sense of humor about it, it weakens those possibilities. But some of us are also fortunate enough to have partners who are our teachers. And within this tradition, when you're a married or otherwise committed couple who are both practitioners, then it's possible to take teachings from your partner. Your partner doesn't necessarily set out to teach you, but your perception of how your partner is becomes a teaching in itself. Or you may even allow them to give you a hint from time to time about a pattern of perception that you've fallen into, or they might do something that jokes you out of it, and you take advantage of that. For those who don't have a practicing partner, then life circumstances can do that for us as well. So we can change our view, we can go somewhere else. If we've fallen into a pattern, if there's even a hint of some idea that this is something I want to escape from, then we can either maybe go to the park, go somewhere busy or whatever, and find that the mood changes. So it's possible to escape from it, in which case maybe it's the endurance and humor, but also I think it's a case of maybe taking note after the event of what it feels like to be within that sense of patterning. And so it's possible to notice it sooner, and it's possible to notice it while we're in it even. This patterning of perception has been likened to having some sort of illness. And I think the example was jaundice. I've never had jaundice, so I'm not quite sure, where there's a yellow cast on your visual perception. If you have that, it may be that you see this yellow wall and you paint it white, but everybody else is seeing that you're painting a white wall white. And they're wondering why you're painting the white wall white. And perhaps when that condition is cured, you'll be wondering why you're painting that white wall white. And so while that's happening, listening to other people or noticing that they might be giving you a sideways glance because they don't quite understand why you're doing what you're doing, is an opportunity for escape from that. And we all do peculiar things from time to time. And so having a sangha, having a group of fellow practitioners is also really helpful in terms of helping us to straighten ourselves out.
Thank you very much.